The Nashville Predators go 0-3 on their Canadian road trip. And friends, this Predators team looks simply broken. We're going to diagnose the problem and tell you what may have to change on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, your free Monday through Friday Nashville Predators podcast. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to kick off this week welcoming any first-time listeners and, of course, giving that cyber shout out to our Locked On Predators insiders and to our everydayers. We appreciate your support and we love sitting here trying to sort through this Predators team with you all. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
Well, the Nashville Predators appear to have hit rock bottom, losing games against two teams that are also at the bottom of the league. Nashville was expected to make a serious playoff push this season. Now they are barely out of last place in the league. We're going to diagnose some of these issues because, friends, there are several, and we're going to tell you what may or may not fix things. Before we dive into all of that discussion, do want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Emma, I had high hopes. I'm a optimist. I'm always looking for the sunshine through the clouds. I'm like, they're going to go on this 3-game Canadian road trip. And yes, Toronto, they're going to be tricky, but they're going to get momentum against Montreal. This Predators team is going to get momentum against Ottawa. Doesn't matter if they're ugly wins. Doesn't even matter if they're regulation wins. They're going to get some wins and they're going to come back and it's going to be a little bit of fresh air in the hockey lungs. Yep, nope. That is not what happened. That is not what happened. The Nashville Predators on Saturday fell to the Ottawa Senators 3-1. Shout out to Fedor Svechkov for scoring a goal, something that has been just absolutely, they just can't do it. It's just not for them right now, the Nashville Predators. Goal scoring is just not for them. Emma, I don't know what to say except losing the games, and I mean no disrespect to Montreal, who has a lot of young talent on that team. I mean no disrespect to Ottawa, who is working really hard to kind of figure out where they are. But when you watch this Nashville Predators team play those two games, I don't know what I'm watching anymore. And I don't mean that as necessarily as a specific criticism. I mean, this team looks lost to me on the ice.
Well, I think that's exactly the point, though, that you're saying, I don't know what I'm watching. That therein lies the problem, because every team, you need to have an identity. And sometimes it's not super specific, each, and that's kind of the point, is each team, kind of like each individual person, individual player, like they're unique in their identity. They have things that makes them different or, hard to play against for whatever reason, whether you're like a high octane offensive team or you have really fast skaters or you play defense first, whatever it is, there's some kind of identity. And that seems to be, I think we've been kind of sitting here, all of us just kind of scratching our heads and then shrugging our shoulders like, I don't know what this team's problem is. And the more I think about it, the more I think that is the problem, is that they don't seem to have an identity right now. They don't seem to be, working toward anything or pulling on the rope or whatever other hockey cliche you want to use. But it just seems like it's just hard to see. They just look so, like you said, lost and kind of like they have an identity crisis right now,
Mhm.
and they don't know what they are, and so we don't know what they are, and so that makes them, it just makes them kind of easy for these other teams to sort of steamroll over, because they're just kind of like existing without really taking on any kind of identity.
I think you are hitting the nail on the head as you're talking about that. I'm like, this may be part of what is so confounding, because when you looked at this roster preseason, and yes, you don't play hockey on paper. Barry Trotz has said that all along. That's just fantasy hockey. But when you looked at this roster preseason, when training camp kicked off, it looked very clear that this team had an identity, and that identity was, this is going to be a high octane offense. This is going to be a goal scoring team. And what is the one thing this team cannot do right now? Score goals. They can't do the one thing that jumps off the page when you look at this roster. It jumps off the page. This is going to be a team that's going to put the puck in the back of the net. Now, what are they going to do defensively? We know they're going to have good goaltending, but what are they, what is the one thing we thought we knew? We thought we knew this team was going to score goals. Now, we like to be right, and let's be real. Emma and I were right. We said, we told you it's going to take some time for the new guy.
I didn't want to be that right.
To be this right, y'all. I mean, but we're past that. We were right. We didn't realize how long we'd have to be right for. But I think that's part of what is so disheartening, is that the thing that was so obviously going to be going right for this team is the thing that is so obviously going wrong for this team. And there is such a dissonance between expectation and reality that it almost makes no sense. And then when you get the team out on the ice, they don't know what to fall back on when another team scores a goal. Like you could see in Ottawa, when that first goal is scored, you just see just this team deflate like my Christmas gnome out front. They got a hole in it, y'all. It was very tragic. They just deflate because they don't know what to fall back on to push back. I think identity is huge.
Yeah, and that's a really good point too. It's like they don't kind of have a, when anything happens in a game, something bad happens, you get scored on, you commit a turnover, you get a penalty, whatever. You need to reset. It's like, all right, let's get back to, back to play speed here. What are we doing? What's the plan? And it seems like there's no plan and there's nothing to go back to. There's nothing where they can just be like, oh, all right, it's fine. It happened, but we're going to get back to our identity. That's something we heard Andrew Brunette say a lot last year.
Yes.
Was get back to our identity. And it's like, what even is this identity right now? Because like you said, it seemed like we knew, because watching the team last year, I think a lot of the issues were, and again, different team, different expectations. It was kind of like a, well, let's see what we got kind of year last year. And it seemed like, I feel like my biggest criticism of the team last year was like, okay, I see what Brunette's trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have the right players to do it, but they're trying, like they're doing their best. And it's like, oh man, if you like, he's trying to run this high octane offense system. It's a lot of skating. It's a lot of movement. If he can just get, but like, this just isn't a superstar roster of players.
Right.
And that's not his fault, but it's like, okay, well, if they could just get those kind of players, then we'll be cruising. And then it's like, well, he got the players, and now it's worse. And so it's almost like, I wonder if, like, I still don't think, and I know we'll talk about this later in the show, it's like, I don't think that it's as simple as like, oh, this is the problem. Like coach,
absolutely not.
Like coach equals problem, or individual player equals problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just a combination of things. But I do wonder if like his system might be better suited for younger players, not only because of the speed and the amount of skating involved,
Mm-hmm.
but just because of where they are in their development path. It's like you get guys who've been playing a certain way for however many years, and then you're trying to like reinvent the wheel with them now. It's in their mid 30s. It's like, it's hard. And so I'm like, again, for that exact reason is why I expected, like, okay, we're going to need to be a little patient. But again, I figured that it would have sorted itself out by now. I think we all did.
Yeah, this has been going on a long time, y'all. Ask Emma and I how long. A long time. It's been many Mondays through Fridays.
Yes.
And we appreciate that you all are along on this journey, because this is how we're going to get together. We're going to get through this collectively, friends. We got to do this together. Coming up, Emma and I are going to dive into what she's talking about, the fact that there are multiple levels and multiple issues going on right now with this team. We're going to tell you what we think some of those are coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. Look, I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but if I'm going to save a couple bucks, it has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. Mint Mobile says it's easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, and it turns out it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. The longest part of the process is going to be the time you'll spend on hold waiting to break up with your old provider. To get started, you can go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNHL. There you're going to see that right now all 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNHL. There you're going to see all of these 3-month plans for $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNHL. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNHL. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speeds slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Friends, if you are looking for a great holiday gift that is sure to be a hit, you have got to check out the deals on live events around town that are on Game Time. Game Time is the fastest and easiest way to get tickets for your favorite sports, music, theater, and comedy, and they make great holiday gifts. Game Time has this feature. It's called Game Time Picks. That's going to make getting those Christmas gifts bought even easier. Game Time filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. Right now, Game Time is having an exclusive zone deal for hockey fans for the NHL Winter Classic event at Wrigley Field. If you go to Game Time to purchase tickets, you're going to get 10% off bleacher seating and 20 to 25% off on home plate area seats. Game Time comes with a low price guarantee and the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets and holiday gifts with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. All right, Emma, I was having this thought the other day, and is it morbid? Yes. But do I think it's a really good illustration of what we're about to do? Also, yes. You know, when somebody passes away and you're not really sure why, you can do one of two things. You can go, well, maybe it was heart disease, probably heart disease, and say they died of heart disease. Or you can open it up and you can do an autopsy and you can really figure out what's going on. And a lot of times it's more than one thing that contributes to, I don't want to say death, but let's just say that, you know, the struggles on a hockey team. We're going to do a little bit of autopsying on this Nashville Predators season. And when you look at the struggles that this team has had, they have 7 wins. 7 wins. What's the first issue that jumps out to you?
The first? I have to pick one?
I mean, we're going to make a list, and it doesn't have to be in any particular order. And friends, this is going to be quite a segment. So settle in, grab some hot chocolate, because have we got to talk about some issues?
Well, they're not scoring goals. That would be number one.
Huge.
Sounds simple, but there it is. You can't win games if you don't score goals. And remember when we were lamenting the fact that the Predators could only score 2 goals per game? Now we're longing for those days because
The
now
good
they're
old
scoring
days.
0 goals. And yeah, it's rough. It's rough, but I would say yes, the lack of goal scoring, especially because of the team that has been assembled here, but even without that, it's like, come on. You can't expect to win.
It is a phenomenon. The Predators are 21st in the league when you look at expected goals for percentage. But the reality is they are last in goals scored, dead last in the league. They are 10th in shot attempts percentage, but they are last in goal differential, which is, how many goals have you scored versus how many goals have you given up? You look at this roster and you're like, even if you 40 goal scorers, of which this team last season, this roster had multiple 40 plus goal scorers, even if you all just did half as much, we would be seeing a little more already. It's just not there. Is it system? Is it snake bit? Is it chemistry? Is it a mystery? Why aren't they scoring goals?
I quite honestly think, and this is going to sound like a cop-out answer, but I truly believe it is a combination of all of the above.
I agree.
I do think, I know people don't like to say snake bit because it sounds like, it's an easy excuse to be like, well, they're just not getting our bounces. That's hockey. It happens. And I mean, to a degree, that is true. And with the number of posts that this team has hit this year, that's where you can be like, yes, okay, this team is snake bit. But that is clearly not the entire issue. It's part of the issue. But it's like you have the snake bit piece. You have the fact that these players, they get on the ice and they look like they've never met before. It just looks like they're not trusting the system because they're not trusting guys to be where they're supposed to be at the right time. And so as a result, you see some very questionable decision making from the guys on the ice. It results in just this kind of panicked decision making. And so that, when you see that happening, that's when you say like, okay, it can't just be that they're snake bit because these are like these are avoidable decisions that are happening. And then I think it's just like, I just really don't know. Like those two things, I mean, they're frustrating as all hell, but you can almost kind of be like, okay, this is a thing that happens and that's,
yes,
understandable. You'd want to see it addressed, but it happens. What is just baffling to me is it just like, okay, they signed all these high skill guys, they got Stamkos and Marchessault and Shea. You would never know. You would never know. They look like they've never played hockey before, some of these guys. And it's like, again, those are the types of guys that you expect to have that ability to just carry the team. And look, Roman Yossi has been trying, but he
has got to be exhausted, y'all. His back hurts.
He's tapped out. And so I think it's like you would expect guys of like a Stamkos caliber to be able to have that quality as well. But he's also new. And it's hard to, kind of do that in a place, in a system where you're unfamiliar. And so clearly looking at this roster, you can't in your right mind say, oh, well, this roster isn't skilled enough. That's the problem. Like we talked about all the things that could be the problem. That's what's not the problem.
Thank you.
Skill.
Yeah.
This is a skilled roster, but they are not performing up to their skill level that we have seen, over a very significant body of work over the years. And so then I think what gets frustrating is like, and we've talked about this before with Andrew Brunette, who I will give him credit, by the way, for elevating Zach LaRue to the second line and putting him in that power play unit. Because we've talked about this, tends to give a much shorter leash to younger players. And it, to me, it looked a little bit like we're treating guys and we're rewarding guys based on what they've done in the past and not what they're doing right now. Where sometimes you need a little bit, like, yes, obviously, if you have an entire roster of rookies or inexperienced guys, like, that's not necessarily a recipe for success either. But sometimes, when your team's going through it, like this team is very much going through it, you need the guys who are hungry and they've got a different kind of energy and they're trying to fight for their lives. And so sometimes it's like you need a little bit more of that, like a shot in the arm in some way. And it's like, nope, we're just going to keep rolling out the same guys who haven't done a darn thing. But hey, look at all the stuff they did in the last couple years and look at all the Stanley Cups they have. At this point, I think a lot of the fans are saying, who cares? Like, we won the Stanley Cup now.
All of the players are struggling. This is a phenomenon to me. All of the players are struggling.
Except UC Saros.
Except UC Saros and Roman Josi. But see, all a team has to do at this point to shut down the Nashville Predators is shut down Roman Josi.
Easy.
That's all you have to do. Who do you have to worry about? Roman Josi right now. You really don't have to worry about other players. And I had this thought this weekend. This would be at high alert if you hadn't added Stamkos and Marchessault and Shea. This team's performance would be high alert with the roster you had last season.
Yep.
But you have added these guys and there is no bump. There is no bump. And again, I know everybody says, well, that's very easy. That clearly points to coaching. Well, friends, again, did you die of heart disease or did you have lung cancer? Like, you got to get in there and dig around. It's always not that clear. But you're right. There is no player going. And when you don't have a couple of somebodies going, then no line is going. In Ottawa, you know who the best line was statistically in Ottawa in that Ottawa game? Novak, Jankowski, and Luke Evangelista. Statistically, the best line out there. 9-3 in shot chances for. When you look at Forsberg, Stamkos, and Nyquist, they played almost 10 minutes together of ice time against Ottawa. 3 shots on goal as compared to 10 shots on goal against. Like, this top to bottom is not working. I will say this. I liked, like you said, Zachary Leroux, elevated. Fedor Svechkov, elevated. Because those are the guys that have at least the spunk. I'm new to the NHL zhuzh, going for them. And that's it. That's it. So there isn't chemistry. There isn't consistency. There isn't anybody performing. And I think at this point, the biggest problem is mental for this team. I agree with you. Don't come at me and tell me it's a talent thing. No, they don't have a top center, but they have a good enough center with the wingers that they have that we should not be where we are. It's not a talent problem.
Yeah, there's definitely room for improvement. Like, they don't have a true 1C. That's totally fair to say. But that alone should not give way to the god awfulness that has unfolded here. It's really just kind of remarkable. And like, again, now that they don't even have Ryan O'Reilly, that he's out with an injury for who knows how long, week to week, not great. And so now we're seeing that lack of center depth exposed even more, which at this point, it's like they're in such a fragile space already that now you're giving them this extra challenge. And it's just like, you almost like want to cover your eyes when you're watching this team now, because it's like, oh no, not again.
And here's what I think when I look at the mental state of this team. I think that this team was so shocked going 0-5 that I think that they just went off kilter. I think that just the mental thing is there, and they were like, wait a minute, we thought we were going to be one thing. And we aren't that. And then you almost try to overwork your way out of it, or you try to work your way out of it in a way that's not productive. And it leads to a hot mess. But this team is dumbfounded. That's the only word I can use. They are dumbfounded. They literally have no idea what's going on, what has hit them. And it's hard to work out of that.
they're all as dumbfounded as we are. And that's the frustrating part. And like another thing that I don't want to hear, because
Come on,
I've heard
girl.
it a lot. I've heard it a lot, is people confidently saying, and people who, let me just say, as you and I, and we are in the locker room, we know who's there and who's not there. And these very confident statements are coming from people who are not there, saying things like, Bruno has lost the room. He's lost the locker room. He's lost their respect. He's lost that. I'm like, based on what? Like, I understand. I am not here defending and saying, yes, like this is Andrew Brunette's the best coach ever. And he is, I'm not saying that like he should absolutely keep his job and he's done nothing wrong ever. But what I'm saying is I feel like people are grasping at these things because they just don't know. It's like, how do you know he's lost the room? Who told you that? Who have you talked to? Like it just, to me, it's not that cut and dry. It's not as black and white, I think, as people want it to be. But I still think that like sometimes, no matter what the outcome of this is, I think there is going to be some kind of drastic move that's
Yes.
made. And I genuinely don't know what that move is, but it more than likely is not going to solve every single one of the problems that this team has, because it's, plentiful, the problems. And when things go awry like this, the way that they have, it usually results in one people or a couple of people falling on the sword for the good of the rest of the team, even though it's not entirely their fault.
Yep. Coming up, we're going to talk about that. Who could fall on the sword for the Nashville Predators, and what good will it do if they do? That's coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and you're going to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it's all going to be in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of that game, you can check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more, and it's all going to be on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Emma, I want to just reiterate one thing you said, because I think this is the thing of all the things that we are trying to sort through and sift through and talk about. This is what I really wish the fan base would understand. And it doesn't have to change. This is point A. It doesn't have to change necessarily where they think point B is, but this is point A that I think I wish people understood. When you are trying to solve a problem, you hear the old adage, if you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. This is zebras. This isn't horses. What is going on with the Nashville Predators is zebras. Not talking referees. I'm talking complicated, unexpected, multiple, oh my gosh, there's a herd of zebras. That's what's going on. This isn't a simple, if A changes, this team turns around. Because the problems are not horses. The problems are zebras. The person most likely to take the blame is going to be Andrew Brunette. And look, Emma and I have said, like we have laid out on multiple occasions, that we don't agree with everything that Andrew Brunette necessarily does coaching wise. Biggest pet peeve, short leash, young players. Just developmentally, I'm like, ugh, just not sure about that. Do I think that Andrew Brunette has lost the locker room? He does not have a clear vision for this team, and that he is a bad coach. Y'all are going to hate me, but the answer is no. I don't necessarily think he's lost the locker room. I think the locker room is lost.
I think they've lost themselves.
They're lost. There is no doubt that this team is lost. Do I think that Andrew Brunette's like, well, I don't know. I don't know what to do with this. No, I do believe that Andrew Brunette has a vision of what he wants to get out of this team. I also can see that's not coming to fruition. Very evidently, it's not coming to fruition. Do I think that Andrew Brunette is a bad coach? Y'all are going to hate me, but the answer is I don't. Don't like everything he does. And I do think there are some things that he has done that have contributed to where this team is now. Like short leash for players, I think those early line changes, in hindsight, you can go, ooh, probably should have stuck with it and let him work through the awkward first date thing to get to a second date on the lines. But this is literally the person who is the easiest to fall on the sword. Wouldn't you agree, Emma? This is your easiest solution. And yet, firing Andrew Brunette is not necessarily an easy solution.
Yeah, I mean, it's the easy because there's only one of him.
Right.
It's easy. You can't fire a whole team. So fire the guy at the top. Makes sense. But while I do think, people keep pointing to other teams as examples, like teams this year already who fired their coaches, St. Louis and Boston. And look, they had an immediate turnaround. Okay, I'm not saying that firing Andrew Brunette will solve nothing. I'm just saying it won't solve everything. Because a lot of times, what you need is just a change and you need something different. And that that kind of gives you a boost, just having the new, the different. And that's kind of where Boston was at. Jim Montgomery hadn't lost the room. It wasn't anything like that. He wasn't a bad coach. He was a Jack Adams winner, but it was like, they just need something here.
Yes.
And he was the something. And, it worked out. He ended up getting a job, 4 days later or something?
3.5 minutes later.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's just like, I think that, that it's almost like an adrenaline rush where it's like, oh yeah, let's go. And then they go on a run and then it kind of maybe,
settles.
It settles. It everything evens out. And, people will point to Edmonton as an example last year. They had an early coach firing and then they ended up in the Stanley Cup final. Okay. But Edmonton is not the
regular
rule. Like that is the
regular
exception. It's the exception to the rule. That doesn't usually happen. And again, I am not here defending Andrew Brunette for everything he's ever done. And I'm not saying that he should keep his job forever. I'm just saying that I think based on what he did last year with this team, I think he has earned this season. He's earned a season to show us that he can, get the most out of these players and out of this team. And if he doesn't by the end of the season, then I'm much more willing to have the conversation. I still don't think like, yes, fire him and that'll fix everything, because it won't. You fire Andrew Brunette, you still don't have a center. I just, it doesn't fix all of the problems. But I do understand that when a team is in dire straits like this, and these are very dire straits, that you need to do something drastic. And the problem is there isn't really a lot of drastic that can be done with the roster the way it's currently set up. You look at the rest of this team, they're all on like no move, no trade clauses. So
or
the
contracts that just aren't going to be appealing to a lot of teams.
Right. And so then you got guys who you can move, but those aren't really the impact pieces. And I don't think that necessarily solves anything. And I just think that if you're looking to make a drastic shakeup, it can't be on the roster necessarily. I mean, maybe it could be a couple of little things. I don't know what it's going to take to pull this team out of this. They don't know what it's going to take until it happens. But I think that, I understand something drastic has to happen. I say, if Andrew Brunette loses his job over this before the season is over. I have no idea if he will, but I'm saying if he does, I think it's going to be a case of he has to fall on the sword for the good of the group.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me so much, and this is very simplistic, but come on this journey with me, friends. It reminds me so much of a relationship. When you are with somebody a while and you're like, you know what, this just isn't working. We're just going to break up, and you break up. And then you meet somebody new and you're like, I'm doing my hair again and I am shaving my legs again and I am my most charming self. That is a boost, and that person becomes very appealing and you become very appealing. And that, I think, is the bump that you see from these teams that change coaches, because what those players are doing is they're going, crap, now I got to show this coach what I'm about and what I'm doing. So are you going to get something out of these players when you change coaches? Probably. Will that be enough to turn this team into a team that magically makes it to the Stanley Cups a la Edmonton Oilers? Probably not, because again, zebra issues, not horse issues, zebra issues. It could give you a bump. At this point, I don't know if that jar for these players is going to be strong enough to turn everything around that needs to be turned around. And I am with you. Again, we have said not everything Andrew Brunette does is just for us. But he was a Jack Adams finalist last year. And this is a young coach. And here is what I'm going to say, and this is my personal opinion. My personal opinion. This is not reporting. This is not statistical. My personal opinion. This league needs new coaches behind the bench. They need new head coaches behind the bench. At some point, and I know this will shock some people, all of the old coaches that you all recycle are going to die. I would rather give grace to somebody who is working their way into a head coaching position than to go, you know what, we're going to fire him and we're going to bring in somebody who has already won a Stanley Cup, which, look, great. That's great on a resume. That's great on a resume. But that doesn't mean that you have a coach who is going to evolve with the game as well. Who the Nashville Predators would bring in if there was a head coaching change. You know what? Maybe that's something we're going to talk about later this week. Pure speculation. Here is what we know as of time of recording. Andrew Brunette is the head coach. Barry Trotz has publicly said that he is going to go with this guy as his head coach. Will he continue to stand by that? That's something that, look, we are all watching very closely. We're going to be at practice today. We will, of course, be back tomorrow to report on the vibes, the locker room, what we see, what we hear, and let you know on tomorrow's show. Going to talk about that. And oh, by the way, they have to play a hockey game tomorrow night. It's at home. That'll be fun, against the Calgary Flames. So we're going to preview that game as well. Emma, before we log off, where can everybody find you and your work?
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
And you can find my work with Penalty Box Radio. You can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find the podcast at LO_Predators as well. Y'all, that's going to do it for this Monday episode. I know it was a heavy one and it is a Monday, but we hope that you enjoyed this first listen of your day. We'll be back tomorrow.